Hello everybody. Hope you are all having a good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. So, just a quick impromptu video because today, as you can see, we are going to quickly go through the Yangyang Shuangling Resonator Showcase. As you guys may know, I don't usually do this, but this may be perhaps the most confusing Resonator Showcase that Kuro has ever released. So I did think it was rather important, even if it was going to be a quick one, to quickly explain what exactly is happening. So as you guys can see here, you may be already confused because I'm starting the video past the 1 minute mark instead of the beginning, and you may be asking, Pingu, what on earth are you doing? So to preface, we will quickly watch through this Resonator Showcase at the 1 minute mark, which probably gives you a bit of a hint as to how confusing it is, because the gimmick or the main theme feature of this showcase is really revealed at this point, and then I'm going to dial it back so you guys can understand what exactly is happening. Let's quickly watch through this.
Yes. When I followed the heart of the storm, time and again, I found myself harboring an unworthy thought of something close to an escapist fantasy. There is someone.
So there is somebody?
Yes, someone.
Someone important?
Someone I could
that I could never forget.
Never forget. Straight.
And Yangyang just gets beat up here, of course. But who is this somebody? As you can see over here, our paths were meant to cross here. Who is this somebody? This somebody is Rover, right? So now I can quickly reveal the gimmick of this video to you. So at the very beginning of this video, which starts around here, what is actually happening is Yangyang is envisioning a possibility or a timeline where Rover never came to save the world per se, right? So you can kind of see here what is burning is Jinzhou, that is Jinzhou's Grand Library and main administrative center, and the video begins like this. With basically Jinzhou burning and all that stuff. And of course you can see the main cast, so that's Baizi and that's Chica on the floor, and Yangyang over here in her usual Midnight Ranger Outrider uniform. So this is of course before she, becomes Yangyang Shuangling, which is going to be like 2 days from now when the patch hits. So this is Jinzhou. This isn't really kind of like any other place, and you can even see here that she says Jinzhou, right?
Hi.
So just quickly skip through the logo. This cannot be how the story ends. And so basically, remember, Rover never woke up and saved Jinzhou in this timeline, right? If you guys remember, what exactly happened when we went through Jinzhou's story in 1.0 is the Fraxis forced Overthrax to reawaken, right? And you can kind of see basically over here that sorry, just prepared a quick slideshow. What was exactly happening is Overthrax reawakens in 1.0, and in the 1.0 story, we stop Overthrax by destroying Dreamless, and with Jian's help, we kind of just like basically beat them back, right? And what's also very important is because Rover was here, Rover and Abby, like the pet cat, right? Whatever, it's a like dumb joke, swallowed Dreamless's frequency, which prevented a lot of the possible destruction that would have befallen Jinzhou. The Overthrax reawakened in this timeline. Rover never woke up, right?
Jinzhou drove it back.
Yep, Jinzhou drove it back, but at great cost, right? And basically, what would have happened if Rover was not here was that, let's just say, Jian and the anti-Chronodian cannon, I forgot what it's called, would have driven back Overthrax, but it would have cost a lot of casualties, which is what the kind of like timeline that Yangyang is experiencing over here. And then what happened is that after this timeline, after like Jinzhou suffered the casualties in this timeline, Yangyang says that she should have stayed, but what she did when instead is that the wind, the streams, which we're going to talk about later, beckoned her to go to a certain place. And if you guys remember, this is actually Resonator, right? So this is Ragusa Harbor. She sails to Resonator. And remember, Rover did not wake up in this timeline. So you can see Resonator in ruins. These are kind of like Resonator like outfits and stuff like that. And The reason why Resonator and Ragunna is in ruins is actually really simple, because who was the main destroying force that kind of like sealed Leviathan and stuff like that was Rover. But Rover did not actually appear in this timeline. So what exactly happened was that, Leviathan was able to just like screw up like Ragunna and like fuck up some shit, and then kind of like go and fulfill this like Thomas Hobbes like fantasy of like destroying Ragunna and stuff like that, right? Purple Sashimi wins at the end of the day. So that actually brings us to, of course, the next section where Yangyang in this timeline goes to the next region, which is going to be Shuangfang, right? Because this is actually the place we saw from the Shuangfang map expansion, and this is where the whole kind of like section that we watch at the beginning of the video takes place. So just to kind of like skip past this. And that, of course, is Rover waking up. And you can kind of see here, basically, that the whole point of kind of like this dialogue here is that if Rover did not wake up in his timeline, Yangyang still thinks that there is someone that she should have met, someone important that she could never forget, our path met across here. And it kind of like basically reveals this whole potential possibility of what would have happened if Rover did not wake up in Jinzhou, right? The whole front of the video was basically showing and visualizing this possibility. So if Rover basically did not wake up in Jinzhou, well, Jinzhou would have beat back the Fernodian, but they would have suffered a lot of casualties, and Resonator would probably be in ruins because of the fact that they couldn't really beat back Leviathan, and we can probably envision that Lahairoi would have also been screwed as well, but they probably didn't have enough visual budget to like animate Lahairoi here, so we skip to Shuangfang, right? And so basically that happens, but what happens here is that Yangyang still falls into this kind of void and chasm, right? And the reason why this happens is because, again, this is not the reality that happened, but rather kind of like an alternate timeline or dream, a nightmare, if you will, that swallows her whole. And we're going to explain why exactly this happens, because this actually has to do with Yangyang's forte. So we kind of like go to a different dream where Yangyang is talking with someone, most likely her mother. Have patience, you will find your path. What exactly is their path? And this is really interesting because it's actually referred to in Yangyang's story, the original Yangyang, right? Where I think it's in the fourth story, she actually kind of like has a conversation with her mother, basically where she asks, like, do you want me to inherit a family business? What do you want me to do? I can try anything and strive for excellence. And this is actually a reference to that scene where, Yangyang's mother and eventually Sui Sui will also tell her that she can do what she wants to do, right?
Do what it tells me to. If you search within, maybe you'll find your answer too.
So that kind of goes to, like her path, my wish, my aspiration. But before we kind of go through and discuss what her eventual path ends up becoming, we need to also talk about one of Yangyang's fortes, which is called the stream. So the stream is not an official term for anything, but really what she considers to be the wind. And as I talked about in some previous comments, as well as also in a previous post, some videos as well, in Chinese culture, wind is the ultimate emissary or passer of messages. So Yangyang's forte really kind of basically surrounds this idea that, yes, wind is an emissary and you can sense a lot of information through the wind. They give insights into energy fluctuations, anomalies, and even the smallest physical details of a person. So she basically has an incredible sensing ability that is wind dependent. So she yearned to explore her ability, but she kept on falling into a maze of details, and she had to train her ability multiple times, and it was essentially assumed that she overclocked when she tried to exercise her forte too much. So what she did instead is that she tried to exercise her forte by focusing on key details rather than swallowing this deluge of information, and she could sift through and extract crucial details. And what eventually happened is that the winds became this kind of foretelling like prophetic ability, because the screams came from afar and gently held Yangyang in their embrace, dispelling her last bits of doubt because she was wondering what she wanted to do, right? Remember this slide, she was wondering what she wanted to do. That's why she asked her mother, and eventually the streams told her that Jinzhou is a place. It is the destination for Yangyang, the wealthy daughter, and the beginning of her journey as Yangyang, the outrider. So that's actually why she became a Midnight Ranger, I'm assuming, and what is kind of referred to in this video when she eventually goes to Jinzhou and seeks a place, because these are all people from, as you know, Jinzhou, and they would be the stepping stones for her path and why she decided to become a Midnight Ranger, preserve these moments forever. So it's actually a reference to that story.
I aspire to become the wind that could carry you all.
And one of the very interesting parts of this trailer a lot of people are talking about are crows, especially how crows refer to Cristoforo. However, I did predict that the crows wouldn't really be as important as they were, and I think I'm correct. They're not really like Cristoforo code especially. It's really just that crows are a bit of a ominous omen within Chinese culture. So with crows, right? A lot of people have mentioned that crows are not exactly unfortunate or unlucky within Chinese culture and history. The reason for that is actually because of a mythical beast called Sanzi, right? It was just basically the three-legged crow. And Sanzi was basically a god that represented heaven, earth, and humanity, which is why they have three kind of like legs over here. And they were very heavily linked to the stories and worship of the sun. However, around the time period of the Song and the Tang dynasty, the worship of these kind of like tales and cults eventually began to decline, and crows became a very unlucky omen, as they are in a lot of different cultures around the world. So it was, for example, believed that, like, if a crow perches on your house, that is a foretelling, I'm pretty sure, in Chinese culture, that someone in your household was going to die soon. So it's basically a very ill omen. But one of the things that's rather interesting as well is that even though crows are an ill omen, the bird that kind of like Yangyang eventually turns these into, right, when she kind of like awakens a tacit mark and stuff like that, is the Shuangling bird. And the Shuangling bird you can kind of see over here, which I've talked about in previous videos and posts, is based on the real azure-winged magpie. Azure-winged magpies are the emissaries of Shiwangwu and stuff like that. But the important thing here is that these azure-winged magpies are also part of the crow family. But of course, these are much more fortunate and lucky omens than full-on crows and ravens and stuff.
That's no.
And this is kind of like the magical girl transformation scene. I think you guys are all like aware of it. And she says, of course, that she is willing to sacrifice everything in order to basically, I think, disrupt this timeline, but I'm not too certain about this part of the video.
Even if this is my...
So even if this is my ending, I think is, again, pretty clear reference to the fact that he is trying to disrupt this timeline where Rover never woke up, right? Because, if Rover kind of like never clocked in, I think Solaris would have been kind of cooked, right?
Ending.
And so she nukes this Echo and stuff like that. And then we have this really interesting scene here where this ethereal Yangyang is looking at this scene. And this scene is actually really interesting because I think that this is the scene in 1.0 before these three kind of like this like triple group, Yangyang, Qixia, and Baizi, discover you, Rover, awakening in Jinzhou, right? And basically this is kind of like a flashback to before the game began, where you gotta like wake up Rover, you gotta clock into world saving duty, otherwise Overthrax would have like fucked up some shit, and then like we all know like Leviathan would have like fucked up some shit as well. But that's kind of like the gist of it. This is kind of like a scene, and the reason why that I think Yangyang is over here is a lot of people thought she was the unknown goddess from the beginning of the game, but I do just think that she is witnessing a vision from the streams, right? And the streams, of course, as we talked about, is her forte, her power, that lets her gain insights into people, right? And also explore a lot of maze of information. So I feel like she's really diving into the streams here, the stuff like that. And what's really interesting as well is that she has there's a voice line here, Votary of the Voice, which is Yangyang's title, Go For.
The voice. Go for. Towards you.
Very beginning. And honestly, I think that a lot of people said this was the goddess, right? And Yangyang is the vessel of like the goddess at the beginning of the game. But I don't think this is fully confirmed yet. For all we know, this could be like Sin, right? From, you know, like the Sentinel of Mengzhou. Because remember, Yangyang was pretty integral to kind of like she intertwined her fate into Shuangfang, even in the timeline that Rover did not wake up. So I'm not too sure on the conclusion that this is a goddess. It is a possibility, but I think this could be Sin for all we know. So this is, of course, going to be something that we will learn more about in 2 days or so. But for now, that's all the details we have. Hopefully, this cleared up some confusions about what exactly is happening, because this is probably the most confusing Resonator showcase that Kuro has ever done. So we'll be kind of like continuing this when Mengzhou releases with Shuangfang. But if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to support me by subscribing, becoming a channel member and all that. And hopefully you guys have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one.